She never imagined that an ordinary afternoon at the park would become the most frightening experience she had ever faced. 12-year-old Lily loved her dog Shadow more than anything. He wasn't just a pet. He was a retired canine, a former service dog who had survived dangerous missions most people could barely comprehend. To Lily, that history made him a hero. But to a group of reckless teenage boys, it meant nothing. When Lily stepped away for just a moment, they saw an opportunity. For teens surrounded Shadow, laughing loudly. One of them switched on electric clippers, the sharp buzzing cutting through the air. The dog who had once faced danger without fear now shook uncontrollably. Patches of his fur were gone, his skin scratched and bleeding. When Lily returned, the sight shattered her. She collapsed to the ground, sobbing as she wrapped her arms around Shadow while he whimpered in pain and confusion. She screamed for help, but the boys only smirked. To them, it was just a joke. They had no idea what they had triggered. The instant Lily's terrified cry echoed across the park, everything changed. People froze. A man sprinted toward her. Not only her father, but a Delta Force commander, trained to stay calm in the worst combat zones imaginable. Even so, nothing could have prepared him for the sight of his daughter kneeling over her injured dog. What followed was something no one expected. Stay with us, because this story will leave you stunned. And before we continue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, where are you watching from? Tell us your country in the comments. It's incredible to see how far these stories reach. Lily was small for her age, but she carried herself with quiet confidence, mostly because Shadow was always beside her. He wasn't an ordinary dog. He had been trained to detect danger, protect his handler, and remain calm under extreme pressure. Yet with Lily, he was gentle, patient, and affectionate. His eyes softened whenever she hugged him, and his tail thumped happily whenever she called his name. Every afternoon after school, they walked to the same park. Lily sat beneath an old tree to do her homework while Shadow lay beside her, alert, as if still on duty. Strangers often smiled when they saw them together. They looked inseparable, like fate had paired them on purpose. To Lily, Shadow wasn't just a companion. He was her best friend, her protector, and the one presence that made the world feel quieter on difficult days. And for Shadow, Lily was the first person who ever made him feel truly safe after everything he had endured as a canine. At least, Lily believed their bond was unbreakable. But not everyone in the park came with good intentions. A group of teenage boys had begun hanging around near the playground, loud, crude, and always searching for someone to provoke. They were older and bigger than Lily and took pleasure in making others uneasy. Whenever Lily passed by, they whispered, laughed, and pointed at Shadow as if daring something to happen. First, Lily ignored them. Shadow would gently nudge her hand, as though reminding her he was there. But the boys grew bolder. They mocked Shadow's calm demeanor, calling him slow, outdated, and useless. One of them even barked at him to entertain the others. Shadow never reacted. He simply stayed close to Lily, watching quietly. The boys mistook restraint for weakness. That assumption led them to make a cruel decision. They wanted to prove they could do anything, even to a trained canine. That afternoon felt peaceful. The sun was warm, and Lily laughed as Shadow chased a ball across the grass. Everything seemed normal. Then Lily realized she had left her water bottle by the fountain. "Stay here, Shadow. I'll be right back," she said, patting his head before jogging off. The moment she disappeared, the boys closed in. Shadow sensed danger immediately and stood up, alert, but they circled him, cutting off any escape. One of them pulled out an electric shaver, its buzzing sound sharp and menacing. "Let's give the hero dog a makeover," he joked. Before Shadow could retreat, they grabbed him. Chunks of fur fell to the ground. The blades scraped too hard, slicing his skin. Shadow whimpered softly, confused and in pain. The boys laughed even louder. When Lily returned, her body went numb. The world seemed to tilt. Shadow stood there shaking, unevenly shaved, blood visible on his skin. Lily screamed and dropped to her knees, clutching him as tears streamed down her face. The boys only grinned. She was still crying into Shadow's fur when she heard rapid footsteps approaching. She didn't need to look up. She recognized that stride instantly. Her father, David, had arrived. Just minutes earlier, he had been nearby, planning to surprise Lily with ice cream. But the second he saw his daughter shaking and her dog injured, his expression hardened. He didn't yell. He didn't rush. He went completely still. David's calm approach unsettled the boys more than shouting ever could. They stepped back instinctively. This wasn't an angry parent. This was a man whose eyes were trained to assess threats. He knelt beside Shadow, gently resting a hand on the dog's shoulder. His jaw tightened as he examined the wounds. Then he looked up at the boys. The laughter vanished. For the first time, they realized this man was nothing like the fathers they knew. Without raising his voice, David pulled out his phone and began recording. The boys' faces, the clippers on the ground, Shadow's injuries. Panic replaced arrogance. "Stay with Shadow, Lily," David said quietly as he called the police. His composure was more frightening than rage. An officer arrived within minutes and immediately treated the situation as a serious crime. The boys' parents were summoned, arriving ready to defend their sons. But when they saw Shadow's injuries, their confidence faded into shock. David explained what happened calmly, never mentioning his military background. He didn't need to. His presence alone demanded attention. Later, at the veterinary clinic, Lily sat trembling on a metal chair as the vet examined Shadow. David stood behind her, his hand steady on her shoulder. The vet's expression grew increasingly serious. "These wounds are deeper than they appear," he said. "The shaving damaged his skin and left him vulnerable to infection. We need to treat him right away." "Is he going to be okay?" Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "He will be," the vet replied. "You brought him in just in time." Guilt overwhelmed Lily. "I shouldn't have left him." David knelt in front of her. "This isn't your fault. Shadow is strong. He'll get through this." Still, deep down, fear gripped him, an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. A week later, the boys stood outside an animal shelter, their heads lowered. The police report and the severity of Shadow's injuries led to serious consequences. Instead of a simple punishment, a judge ordered mandatory community service caring for abused and injured animals. At first, they treated it like a burden. But everything changed when they were tasked with cleaning cages. One boy froze when he saw a small puppy huddled in the corner, shaved unevenly, its skin bruised, painfully similar to Shadow. Something inside him cracked. For the first time, laughter was replaced by guilt. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered an apology the puppy could never understand. By the end of the day, all of them were silent, truly silent. And for the first time, they understood the weight of their actions. Shadow's recovery took time, but each day brought progress. His fur slowly grew back, and his tail began to wag again whenever Lily entered the room. Every evening, she sat beside him, reading stories, brushing his healing coat, and whispering, "You're my hero, Shadow. You always have been." David watched them, grateful that their bond hadn't been destroyed, only made stronger. At school, Lily surprised everyone by giving a short speech about protecting animals and standing up to cruelty. Her words were simple, but they stayed with everyone who heard them. A few days later, the boys approached her. No jokes, no arrogance, just quiet apologies. Lily didn't fully trust them yet, but Shadow stepped forward, sniffed them gently, and wagged his tail once. In his own way, he was showing that forgiveness was possible.